So as you know, you're in the equality and sustainability session right now. And so really the highlight of the title was what is a woman's role, or what is the role of women collectively in the fight for sustainability and sustainable communities. And to me, I feel like a really good way to start the conversation is just sharing a framework that I learned quite a while ago. It's pretty commonplace now, but the 4 pillars of sustainability. They encompass some of what we already think of, obviously, as like environmental responsibility is absolutely a cornerstone, and in a way, the thing that leads the conversation. As we all know, our environment is stressed, and therefore that causes stress on all of us in a lot of different ways that manifests. Also economic development, and within economic development, it would be some consistency and reliability in our economy, especially in developing countries and vulnerable populations. So we have the economy, the environment, and then social equity, which I think is the latter two are the ones that sometimes get missed when we talk about sustainability, because you can have a really thriving technological environment with solar energy and everything, but if your people don't have social equity, it sort of is undermining the entire process. We need to have not only equality between genders and sexes, but between different classes of people, blue collar, white collar, even within different continents. So there can be a lot of disparity, which has a negative effect on building a sustainable climate. And then finally, the 4th pillar, which is one that gets overlooked very often, is cultural vitality. And to me, not only is that worth having a conversation about as a way of measuring how sustainable a community is, I think that that's also something that we can leverage. So our culture gives us the why, when it's like, well, okay, we're only going to live to be 100, all of us, so living in a way that serves our needs and then also the needs of the future, we think of first our people, our children, our grandchildren, our community members, our neighbors, and so that cultural vitality piece, I think, is a big piece that's worth talking about. Along with that too, though, is it's unfortunate, as we notice, some of the most vulnerable populations to climate change and to those effects of natural disasters or not having access to sustainable food are some of the regions with the most cultural vitality. So I wish I was here with an answer, for sure. This is the key on how to connect those. But it's something that I think I just wanted to call attention to under the same realm of how do we leverage that cultural vitality in order to foster sustainable communities and make the why so strong that we unite to find solutions to these other issues. Because there's a lot of conversations happening in the world right now about, we could take environmental responsibility, for example. How many people in the world are using their talents to try to find renewable sources of energy, energy-efficient cars, energy-efficient houses and businesses? And people are leading those conversations. So we're moving in the right direction, but coordination is also a big problem too, because there are certain politics at play too that are keeping people in silos, and there are certain corporate interests that might be working at odds with some development in this way. And so I think using cultural vitality as the piece to start the conversation is something that we can all share with each other in a way that fosters more collaboration. So I don't know if anybody has any thoughts before I keep going. There's a couple different ways this could go. Does this bring up anything to anybody in particular that you want to talk about? Yes.
I used to do some volunteer work with an organic agriculture farm that trained immigrant farmers in organic agriculture, and it was a nonprofit. And what strikes me as a person who spent 25 years doing marketing and communications in corporate, trying to make sense of complicated things, is I can't help but wonder if it's changing the vernacular somehow, reframing the way that we think about it, even the dialogue, the language, to be more accessible, because I still to this day am somewhat befuddled by how do I make sense of this thing, there's so many tentacles and so many and there's a very unique language, a specific language, like even, the 4 pillars, the cultural vitality,
Mhm.
it makes sense on one level, social justice. How do we get a snapshot of that and make it simpler?
Right. Right. What I would love, I mean, if I had like a magic wand, right? Well, if I had a magic wand, it would be solved. But if I had to go a step further, when we're making policy decisions, taking this framework or a similar framework, but I think that this pretty much touches on like what people need to live a fulfilling, safe, sustainable life. So you have a policy in front of you and you ask yourself, environmental effects, economic development effects, social equity effects, and cultural vitality. Are we protecting, in most cases, this is going to be, how are we protecting the culture that's already there? But the conversation could also be, like, how do we enhance what's already there? How do we, maybe, in some settings, like in a corporate setting, how do we just kind of get rid of the culture that's already there? So, maybe vitality is not always the right language to use. Maybe it's like, cultural permeation and just like seeing how that works.
Let me make a comment on that. The political, the public political conversation in our nation on this. I live in Red State, Texas,
Okay.
and there are lots of people who voted for the current occupant of the White House
Mhm.
who say, I don't give up about the environment.
Yeah.
And so I think that there is a fundamentally important framing to do, and that perforce means simple language,
Yes.
to speak plainly, to reach out to folks. So when I'm talking to my Red State friends, I will say things like, I love the land.
Yes.
And it's my duty as a citizen to care for the land, to make sure that I can leave it as a legacy to my grandchildren
Yeah.
and yours. And those are the kinds of I don't feel like I've got the framing down, but I've got to start on it.
Yeah, that's value-driven language.
Totally value-driven
And it's-
language. Without
and
that, the policy is meaningless.
Right,
without
it's not pandering, it's just making it digestible to somebody, in my opinion.
Well, it speaks to the part of the brain that makes decisions. The brilliance of policies is that they're solutions-oriented. But speaking about policies speaks to the part of the brain, specifically the neocortex. And this is the number of decisions the neocortex makes. So if you want to get no decision and no movement in people, talk about policy.
Yeah, no, that's bureaucracy
Yeah.
and slow moving.
You could have a plan.
Yeah, have you heard an argument ever that I don't care about the environment because the second coming of Christ is so close that we don't even care?
I have heard that argument.
Yeah, so it doesn't, anything you say to those people, they don't care.
That's right. And so of the humans in the world, there are about 40% of them are progressives, 40% of them are so-called conservatives, although what they conserve is totally a loss on me anyway. And then there are these persuadables in the middle. Often in a political context, we call them independents. So there's a moral model that subtends these folks on each side. A strict father model for the so-called conservatives and a strong cultural or a strong nurtural moral model, family model for folks on the progressive side. And the folks in the middle who are persuadable actually hold both of those models fairly equally it's in the context of politics and culture and such as that. So those are the people we can language to. These folks who are stuck over here in the Jesus is coming like Tuesday at 3, yeah, they're not going to hear it. I don't worry about
But
them.
they're still
I don't need
saving
them. I
money.
need that 20%.
I think we- I think we also need to look at this in a global way, because yes, that's the politics in the United States,
Mhm.
but when it comes to the environment and it comes to not necessarily
It's a global system.
sustainability- Yes.
See, it's a global system.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
and so you have to have policy involved. If you don't have policy to back up action, it's just talk. and that's
Amen,
not
sister,
productive.
amen. And we see that on the right. They're good at talking the game. And, yeah.
And I think that brings up, so a conversation that happened literally just like right before we started had to do with like, we happen to be talking about organic makeup, but it brought to light something for me that I wanted to bring up too about this, it's moving in the same direction of like accessibility and privilege and also the ability to live in a sustainable way. So as our climate is, or our earth is stressed because of the climate change and such, I think that we often sometimes get wrapped up in the idea that like the world's just gonna blow up, and that's almost like provides me solace. But what is really gonna happen is like bread is gonna become $15 a loaf, and like shorelines are gonna recede, people are gonna lose their
We're
homes.
seeing that already.
Like we are going to dive into despair before the world blows up, and so unfortunately that's going to affect coastal regions that like depend a lot on that coastline for their economies, very vulnerable populations. I don't even really like to use the word developing countries because in a lot of ways like what we consider to be developed countries are some of the worst offenders as far as like acting in an undeveloped way in like a cultural like community sense. So like I'm still searching for the right terminology, and that goes back to your point too about when you have the power to name and you have the power to have this conversation around the words that you want to use, you're already self-selecting yourself into a group that may not have the full picture of what's happening globally. So, yes.
We were having a conversation about this because we care deeply about it.
Mhm.
And I think there's another level, because I'm always like, the reason I'm here is like, what's that lever, you know, what's that point, like if you could get that fulcrum, what would tip it one way or another and really have the greatest impact? And I think there's two things that have been really clear as in the context of this conversation from my time here with every one of you, and that's that power of connection. And I think a lot of our overconsumption and the ways that we behave is because of disconnect from one another, from the earth, from experiences that allow us to, you know, like just relax into our beingness and, you know, what we were put here to do. And the other one is eluding me at the moment. What was the other one?
Connectivity.
Yeah, connectivity. Yeah.
To ourselves. And
Well,
to-
and I'll say something on that, and then I want to make sure that we get a chance, because we're sort of like now getting a little nebulous, so I'm going to pass it on. But I think in that case, there's a certain, like, also cliche that's coming up is like female empowerment, and like I get that, but for this is so severe that I tend to believe that we need like real power. Like what, there's a difference between like feel empowered to make decisions and to be the person that's like leading the discussion, and then there's like, okay, that's really great, you're empowered, you feel a certain way, but what about the real power?
Yeah.
And like that's, I feel so strongly about like, you probably need to just be trying to do that and trying to get like your sisters to be there before they feel fully empowered to do so.
So who's running for office?
Right. Yeah.
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 I mean, there's great like local program like Emerge, I know, is one with like Democratic women in order to like share resources and to be in office. And I mean, I'm not trying to like sound like a man hater, but there's this like rumbling of female energy across the world, and it's hard to tell if it's a rumbling, you know, because our planet is, or like our planet is stressed, or if we're just like collectively sharing more and being empowered and actually, I don't know what the other word, but like actual real powered. But there's a rumbling of that energy, and that's the cultural vitality piece that like won't stop talking to me. And I feel like we're at the fulcrum, and I wish I had the answer. If I did, like, that'd be really cool. But maybe somehow today we leave here in a different way than we came, and who knows what that like ripple effects out to. And like, again, I'm on a female thing right now, but I mean, we have a gentleman in the room. I hope that that's okay. Like what I'm saying is okay with you, and that if you don't find it to be divisive, because I don't mean to be divisive, but I do feel strongly that there's a certain element of collaboration that can come of that rumbling energy right now. So I'll pass it on, just so we don't run out of time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We try to read it to you now. Yay. Okay, so So I will talk on behalf of all French speakers who don't want to come here, but facing these language issues, they couldn't. I want just to tell them that it's possible for them to come and participate on this kind of forum. So I would ask you to allow me to do this panel in French, so they can just be encouraged to say, I can also participate on this kind of session.
We do.
So one shall I will be translated by Lydia.
Am I?
Yes.
Lydia.
So,
Let's go down.
so
Go down there,
you
Lydia.
can come with, yeah.
What a great idea.
Moment while she moves around.
Je voudrais en fait partager avec vous cette vidéo qui en fait nous parle de la situation globale du monde.
I would like to share with you this video, which is about the global situation of the world.
Pour moi, l'objectif, c'est que nous puissions tous voir et savoir, lorsque nous parlons de sauver la planète, nous pensons à quoi exactement?
For me, the aim is to have everybody understand what we mean when we are talking about saving the planet.
Et nous, en tant que femmes, savoir par où est-ce que nous devons commencer quand on parle de sauver la planète.
And as women, we need to know where to start when it is about to save the planet.
Alors, je ne sais pas si nous pouvons reprendre la vidéo pour que nous puissions être encore plus attentives.
Allow me to restart the video for each one to have the time to watch onto it.
Can we get rid of that?
No,
I don't
No.
I already asked.
Okay.
Yeah, that room is blocked.
Who's ever in the box?
Regine, can you say what's supposed to be there? Just, I mean,
Yeah.
we can pretty much read it.
Oh,
but,
okay.
Just in case.
Okay, sorry. War and child soldier. Let me just look at the beginning.
Thank you.
Sorry. That is the global situation of the planet. Natural and climatic disaster. War and child soldiers. Fight again, you, Yoncha?
Hunger.
Sorry. Insecurity. Access to education. Access to medical care. Destructive health agriculture. Natural. To domestic violence. Violence against women. 5 months. That's what the. So, pour moi plutôt, ça c'est une situation globale que nous vivons tous et partout au monde.
For me, this is a global situation about which everyone is aware.
Et si je dois parler de là où moi je viens, je dirais que la situation, ça ne fait que s'aggraver.
And if I can speak about the place where I'm coming from, I can say that it's getting even worse.
Et moi, nous en tant que femmes, nous avons un grand rôle à jouer.
And as women, we have a major role to play.
Premièrement parce que nous sommes mères, nous sommes épouses.
First of all, because we are mothers, we are spouses.
Et nous avons en fait nous avons un grand impact sur les enfants et même sur nos époux.
And we have a great impact on children and on our husbands.
C'est pourquoi je dis que nous, femmes, nous avons un grand rôle à jouer.
Now I'm saying that women have a major role to play.
Nous avons un grand rôle à jouer dans l'éducation.
We have that major role to play in education,
Nous avons un grand rôle à jouer dans le changement de mentalité.
in changing mentality,
Nous avons un grand rôle à jouer même au niveau de notre travail.
and even in our workplace.
Nous avons un grand rôle à jouer. Je voudrais en fait qu'ensemble nous puissions discuter et réfléchir sur ce que nous devons faire.
So I would like every one of us discuss together on what are the actions that we need to take.
Et ces actions que nous voulons prendre, nous devons penser à ce que ça soit durable.
And I would like us to think about sustainable actions.
Parce que si nous ne pensons pas à ces actions durables maintenant,
Because if we don't think about it,
nous allons voir cette planète s'écrouler
we
bientôt.
will see this planet disappearing very soon.
Alors, je nous laisse tous la parole.
So I'm giving you the floor
Nous pouvons tous donner nos idées.
for each one of us to give his own contribution to this situation of disaster. Thank you.
Thank you.
What was that conversation?
Is it? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I want to reflect on that and kind of bring it back to what you were talking about. I didn't get your name though.
Oh, Chanel.
Chantel.
Chanel.
Yeah.
You were saying how you don't have a solution, and Regine, you're asking for contribution from us, and I think it really speaks to the problem that it requires a lot of different minds and a lot of different strategies, and it requires all of us coming together to work together, and actually through the process of working together, we can find solutions, because there isn't a quick fix, a blanket fix. There are so many aspects of our lives that are affected by the changing of the climate, and we're going to see that more and more as you were speaking about. So thank you for inviting that for everyone to sit.
Perhaps, so we can let Leda do hers, and then use the rest of the time to have her floor.
Okay.
Oh, are you also speaking? I
Yes.
did not realize that.
Okay, so I'm going to stand up. Actually, what Julia just said is exactly what I wanted to speak about, which is I'm in tech now, and I call it tech for good. And one of the huge disappointments of my career has been that when I left technology, I got a Master's of Business Administration and Information Systems, and I graduated from New York University in 1985. So then I worked in technology, putting in mainframe systems for large companies like IBM and Con Ed and these big companies, worked with, always with big groups of people, large teams. And so then when I left that in '89, basically because I got sick with asthma, then I taught at Purdue University for a while in systems, but I don't consider that really in technology because you're not in the flow of it. So when I left at '89, then there were a lot of periods where I did a lot of other things, which I talked about yesterday, but then I came back to it in 2013, let's say. I took a boot camp to catch up because I left mainframes and I had learned, software, web stuff. And the most disappointing thing of my career was that it had gotten worse for women. It had gotten worse. From '89 to 2012, there were fewer women graduating in computer sciences. Every group that I was in, it was the most hostile. And of course, now I'm older, it's also incredibly ageist. It's not just they don't like women, they don't like old people. For older is over 40, for sure. I had a person tell me, the COO of the startup that I was with, that if he had two candidates, one was younger, one was older, and they were the same, he would always choose the younger one. I mean, that was, and he felt fine saying that. You wouldn't say if you had two candidates, one black, one white, you'd always choose the white one, would you? Two women, black, but you'd say two young and old, you'd always choose the young one. I mean, that's the level of lack of knowledge about ageism there is. But that's not what I'm here. It's about the women. And the thing about not having women in technology has a huge role to play in sustainability. And what we were talking about last night about maybe not the word sustainability, but more the word like regeneration. So it's more like, does that mean more it means to regenerate, to build again, to cultivate and nurture? All of these are female words, really. And even if all you care about is money, let's say that's what you care about. You don't care about equality, you don't even care about, if only you care about money, you're an idiot if you don't have your place half women. Because every study, just last 2 weeks, Forbes came out with another study that showed that if there are at least half the women throughout the organization, particularly at the board level, you make more money. If you have more women and more diversity, you make more money. I keep saying, why don't we just sue the ones that don't have diversity and say you're not, the stockholders should say, you're not supporting me because you're not making as much money as you could because you don't pay women enough. And that's the truth. So even if it's just money, we have to diverse. But I'm not thinking, that's just an aside. The real thing for me is that we are not getting real solutions, and we don't even know what solutions we're not getting. So every time I use this piece of software, and my husband does not like software at all, so I'm always just saying, just wait for the next round. You know, there'll be a new update on the Washington Post app, and it doesn't work right. I say, give it a week. The developers are working on it. There's going to be a new one. That's the problem. The software is terrible, and I'm a software developer, right? It is terrible. It has terrible user interface. We're not creating the right kind of software for the right problems. We're not solving the right problems. Why? Because we don't have women at every level of software development, in my opinion, at least on the technology side. Because I can tell you, the person that is doing the coding, that is the lowest considered level, is making decisions that they don't even know they're making, based on their life experience. What do they care about? Do they care about color and the way it looks? Do they care about whether the kids get home on time? Do they care about whether people are sick in their lives? Not really. Not if you're 25 and male. Not the ones I know. I'm sorry. That's my experience. And so you got to have women, because you think, well, it does definitely matter at the boardroom. They set tone. But the people that code make decisions that then give everybody else choices. Right? They decide that. Now, they can be said now, oh, I had to make something for solar energy for getting clean water out of wells, or there's all these different projects that have gone on. But even given a good assignment that's pretty open and interesting, if you only have men developing it, will be very different than if you have half women and half men at least. I guarantee you. And I mean at the code level that I work in. So I feel obviously very strongly that one of the solutions, and I know it's not the only solution, we have agriculture, we have a lot of things to work on, but one of the solutions is technology. And I just was showing yesterday, I got the a Women in Tech Award this year. Hey, Wonder Woman 2017. I want every woman to be a Wonder Woman. It's not the idea that you can't do tech. They give out these little, I thought that was very clever, they gave out little capes. There were 7 of us that won. The idea that this is something, of course, that only men can do, you know, it's just logic. It's logic. That's all it is. And yeah, you're better at it. And there's all this data now about how to get women in. Like, we know what happens. CS 105 or the beginning CS class in every university in America, the people come in, and maybe 80% of the males that are there have done this for so long. So their first assignment's like this. The women, 80% of the women have never done it before, but they're smart and they've done a lot of great things. They know math, they know science, but they've never done coding. And they immediately get discouraged and leave. Now, what's the difference there? It's just experience.
That's
so
right.
All you have to do is mentor. And we know how to do that. There are companies that do it. There are companies that have made commitments to do it. I work with Salesforce a lot now. The guy that runs Salesforce has made a commitment to open the books on all salaries, compare it, saw the disparity, gave the money to raise it up. And that's what companies, we need to have that leading the way, and we need to empower women to go into something that is not only good for your career, not only can you make a lot of money, but you can make better the planet by being involved in technology. And we need to have mentors to help women along, which I certainly try to do, and we just need to call out sexism at every chance we get. We just hired, where I work for a social nonprofit called Avalante, and we hired a new IT person. And I'm considered software side, that's kind of hardware. IT is like hardware stuff, mostly servers and routers, or switches and routers and servers. It's the sort of the backbone, which I'm not as interested in. That's even more male than software development. So we're interviewing, and they said, here's our list, we have these people. I say, well, do we have any men, have any women or people of color? And the group just stops. And the VP, my boss, says, well, we don't consider that, we just want the best person. And the other person says, yeah, well, I'd never, and they just go on and on. I go, yeah, right. Well, where's the pool? We got nothing but white guys here. So the next time we get together, I get a woman to interview. Guess what? She's completely unqualified. Okay, you threw me a bone, and it's embarrassing to everybody in the room. To me, it is. She's not going to get the job, right? So now I hope to be promoted, and I've got a new job out. It's called application programmer, which is what I do. But I will hire a white male. It's not that I won't, but I want to choose from at least half a pool that's half women and including people of color. If you can't do that, I don't see how you ever get ahead. And you have to give nod to people who have potential but aren't there. Okay, I'll finish with this. I'm probably running out of time. This is exactly how it happens. So the one person we hire for that IT job, he's fantastic. He's a young guy. He's smart. He's done a lot of things. He's worked for Tricor. The guy that he's going to report to, Mike, wanted kind of cultivate him, brought him from Tricor. He's making a lot less money, which is a terrific thing. That's the millennial thing. It's a crappy Tricor. I don't know if you know them, but it's a really big high bureaucracy place, right? So he's coming to Adelante, which is very loose, and we're much more friendly. So he's taken a cut in salary to do something that's going to be more fun, which I love that. I don't know if I would have done that at his age. I admire that. So I'm looking at his resume, and he's clearly the best guy. I mean, not only do we know a lot about him, but there's a lot of reasons. Look at his resume. He doesn't even have a college degree. He says, in his resume, he says, in his resume, he says he went to work for this one person and he learned a lot, And so then in the interview, I think I said to him, so, my boss said, so how did you go from being in this place in Texas with no experience in switches to getting this job at this company? And the guy says, well, actually, there was a man there who taught me everything I know. I really didn't know anything, but he took me under his wings and he taught me everything I know. Now, why did he do that? He did it because he saw potential. Exactly. He didn't have the credentials. He was smart, but not any smarter than any women I know. And he just helped the guy get ahead. He gave him that. He didn't have anything else. That's what women don't do and don't get. There aren't enough women up there to do it, but I mean, I just thought in that moment, that's the crust of it. The crux of it, the crux, the middle, the seminal part, because you have people who are, in technology, you don't even need a college degree. You just have to be able to do it. How do you learn to do it? Usually somebody shows you.
And then you practice.
As we start before we move on, CS 150 was the only class I ever took twice because I got a D. It's the only D I ever got. So Exhibit 8.
And then you got?
A C+.
Good.
Because I still didn't get an A.
But you
Fathers
could.
was
Go for it.
So since everybody else was standing, I thought I should stand also rather than sitting down. And I took a look at our topic today and how do women save this planet and create equality and sustainability. And so I thought about it both from the aspect that was presented in the film, from our earlier conversation, also from technology, but we have to look at it in a broader sense in terms of our equality raised in every single aspect of what we do. And so that's in government, that's in business, that's in policies, and that is in all of the legislation that we put together. And I'm going to explain to you how that works. So for example, men and women, we don't think the same at all. And so once we started letting more women into the boardroom, we started seeing color there. So we saw purple jackets, we saw red jackets, we saw yellow jackets, and as a result, we saw the conversation change in the boardroom. So things did not always look just black and white, and a woman's point of view was brought to the table. So that was really great. And then I look forward to a man named, I think his name was Frank Baird. Maybe many of you heard of him. So he wrote a book, walk a mile in her shoes. And this was about having men walk in high heels for a mile, and that was to bring attention to domestic violence. So, men don't have to be oppressive to women. Let their voices be heard. Let them walk side by side with you. Look at how they're walking and then listen to their voices. If we want this planet to remain and to be sustained, we have to have every single voice that is here to be heard equally. Then there was this book by a woman, I think her name was Gloria Moss, and so she wrote that women see polka dots and men see straight lines. And so again, there was this conversation about the differences between the way men think and the way women think. And so that becomes incredibly important if we just look at what happened to IBM. So remember, they started out, they were just the top technology group in the entire world, and they had all of this great technology going forward, but there weren't many women there, and what happened? They didn't change, they didn't expand, and so where are they now? They're no longer number one, but they may be number 5 if they're that high. But the next aspect of what I want for you to look at in terms of us as women and how we keep our voices strong is I still think that the area is in economics. So I look strongly at equal pay. So in 1963, John F. Kennedy signed what was known as the Equal Pay Act. Nothing happened again until nothing has happened. So there's been something called a Fair Paycheck Fairness Act that has been put forth. But who's in Congress? Mainly men, and who's not voting for that? Mainly men. So there is no teeth in the Equal Pay Act. Do you know why most women don't win under that Equal Pay Act? Because there's a 4th provision in that act that says, and any other reason that you would have for not paying a person equally. So every single time men have gotten away and taken and used that 4th provision of the Equal Pay Act as to why they don't pay women equally. It could be, well, oh my gosh, she worked part-time and this man worked full-time, and so why should I pay her equally? So all those types of things came about. Let me tell you what happened right here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So there was passed something known as the Fair Pay for Women Act. And so that act had so much teeth in it, and it gave women the opportunity to bring these cases forward that would say, pay me equally for what I do, and that 4th provision was not a part of the statute. And the biggest employer, the largest employer in the state of New Mexico is state government. And you know what the position they've taken now? Is that the Fair Pay for Women Act doesn't apply to them. 62% of the employees are in state government are women, but yet the act doesn't apply to them. And guess who has brought 5 cases in the courts right now? Women, because they're not being paid fairly. So that case is currently sitting right now in the Court of Appeals, waiting for the court to decide, does this apply to women or not? And I just want to throw this out to you that Sandia Laboratories has taken that same position. So the women at Sandia are saying, we are not being paid fairly. And Sandia said, well, that Fair Pay for Women Act doesn't apply to us, though they have used that act. And then I want to just throw one last item out to you as we look at the economics of what happens to women. Because remember, in order for our voices to be heard, we have to be able to purchase, we have to be able to participate in the financial system. And so right now, the state of California, the courts have taken the position that employers can use what's called prior salary to determine what your next salary is going to be. So if you're already not being paid fairly and they're going to use this prior salary, how are we ever going to get to that sustainability equals equality if we're not being heard? So what we need to make sure, women, is that our voices are being heard loud and clear and not in a whisper. Because in order for this planet to be sustained, we have to have that equality among our voices. So thank you.
And I agree about what she's saying because I was working with some women in my country, encouraging them to create business, to create company, because I believe also that as a woman, if we want to be to have this equality and this sustainability, we need to be economically strong. Yeah, we need to be economically strong because we need to participate. They will just say, oh, yes, they have done this, they have done this, they have done. So our work will be show before everybody will see this company is for this woman, and she's employing 100 person. You see, this company, and it will be will be strong by being financial strong. So I think it's to be economically independent is a point for us to assume this equality and sustainability.
Can I make a comment to your point?
Sure.
Okay. So in being economically strong, I had a long career in technology myself. I really appreciate your comments. For a long time, I was an employee, and then I went into contracting, which fits me better. I'm in the professional world. I'm better dating a company than getting married to them. So, and so what I would do every time, I'd go into a company. They'd want me for 3 months. They keep me for 13. But you can always kind of smell it when things are starting to wind down. And so I do two things. I would look at what I had learned in that, and this is really a great strategy for anybody, and I recommend it for all of you, particularly the young women here, to think about what you've learned in your last gig, and think about where you want to be in your future, and what you need to learn to do that. And I would set my intention on finding a place that gave me that learning, so that I could step up my game. I would always schedule a training in between time. So, I'd get, every time I was in between gigs, I'd get another certification. Because you want to be the stone on the top of the pile for them to pick you up. There's so many people looking for another gig. And then I would pick how far I wanted to drive to get there. Because I live in the Dallas Metroplex, driving is miserable. And then how much money I wanted. And every time I would always be the highest paid person in my salary range. It wasn't because I was a woman. It wasn't because I was the most talented. It's because I was very clear on what I wanted in my future, and that clarity telegraphs energetically. They get, you mean business. And I delivered every time I was there, and that's how you step up. I would find mentors who were smarter than me, who could let me know how the politics works in this company, and just those kinds of things. And getting great mentors, finding somebody who will show you the next thing you have to learn is possible when you know what it is you've got to learn. And that's something that comes from knowing yourself and knowing where you want your future to go.
So I would just add to that is I think that that's great, and I absolutely believe that we need to have mentors to move us forward.
Yes.
One of the things that I see that happens to women, for example, when they want to have a family and they want to also have a career, one of the things that we've noticed is that employers have not necessarily taken very kindly to women giving birth to their children and working at the same time. So there's little bitty item called pregnancy accommodations in the workplace that we're not seeing enough of. So instead of giving women an accommodation for a short period of time so that they can continue to work and advance their careers, they fire them. New Mexico is an at-will state, so there is no indelibly planted right to any type of job in this state whatsoever. So what we have to do is, once there are women like you who move up and move to the top, you've got to make sure that trickle down, that those policies are in place, that women who come later and that they want to have children and continue to work in the workplace, that the policies are in place that say, yes, you can work, yes, I will accommodate you, and yes, your career will continue to move.
I agree
Well,
100%. That
and-
happened very much to me, because the story that I described was after my children were my youngest was about 8 years old. Now, before, I'd had exactly that situation.
There's gotta be policy and culture though, because you can't say you get X number of weeks and that's it. I mean, it is a culture of acceptance of, yes, I understand that you're gonna have to go pick somebody up because they're sick at noon, and I understand that you might be able to still continue to do your work from home at that point. It's a matter of like being flexible enough to see the value in an employee outside of just like these really black and white parameters. Because that's sometimes, I mean, sometimes employers will do like the bare minimum of what is legal, and they're saying, well, we're accommodating you, but we're also making your work life a living hell. We're making you feel exercising your rights under the law, within the law. So there are so many people that don't, men and women, but for this conversation, women, that do not take what is rightfully theirs under the legal framework because of how the workplace culture is and how terrible that actually is to even exercise what you're entitled to. So, and I think that's just so sad because we can be fighting on the legal framework side, we can be fighting on the policy side, but if employers don't actually take that on and just do sort of whatever they're going to be not in trouble for,
Mhm.
is a problem.
I think it's so important too to bring up workplace culture because you're right, no matter what policy is in place. I have a friend who's about to have a baby. Her husband works for a car company that makes car parts in Michigan. Or actually he's in Canada now. But he works, she's like, he gets 2 weeks off for after I have a baby, but he's not gonna take it because it's gonna be trouble for him later if he actually takes that full amount of time. And he knows it. Nobody takes that amount of time off. And it's just like, but that's the company that's what they give you. That's their policy. But the culture of the workplace discourages you from taking what's rightfully yours.
They
It's
say the
unfortunate.
trend in the country is to take, in America, is to take less and less time. Like, you may have 4 weeks a year or whatever it is, but nobody's taking it for fear of losing your job.
The workplace there's a few companies that offer unlimited time off to their employees, and they've found that actually offering the unlimited amount of time off actually makes people take less time off than they even would before because they're afraid to be looked down upon.
Right.
Well, how many people have gone out with your friends or coworkers or something and you turn into this, like, I worked so many hours, like, it's almost a game. Like, I think culturally, even just, like, as a society, we're just, like, I'm just, like, working so many hours. Like, this, like, medal that you get to wear of just being, like, a workaholic and, like, addicted to your job and, like, I'm the go-to person and, like, I can be counted on. And that's also an inherently, like, female issue, too, of being, like, a people pleaser and, like, something I spoke about yesterday about just, like, really subscribing to whichever label is, like, upon you and wanting to be, like, the best and get the gold star in that sense. Whereas, I mean, I'm working on a campaign right now, and I'm having all these conversations about, like, how do we get to the finish line? And a male that I work with is like, yeah, I really want to work for so-and-so, like, after he wins. I'm just like, whoa, I'm over here stressing about, like, how we're going to get there, and you're already, like, scoping out your office, and you're not even concerned about him winning. Like, so it's a problem because, or it's not a problem for him, it's a problem for me. He's already acting within that confidence of being able to just do whatever he wants. And I'm already seeing, like, the 5 roadblocks that there is before I can even be allowed to have that conversation. And so it's just, yes, sir.
There's a huge cultural difference between Scandinavia and here.
Mm-hmm.
I've been executive in big corporations, both there and here. And in Sweden, just read last week about maternity leave in Sweden where men are forced to take at least 60 days. They need to spend time with their baby for 60 days so that the mother can go to work. So the overall maternity leave is for a year, and then has to take 60 days of that, and the mother can take the rest. Or they can split it any given way they want.
I recently had like a total burnout at work, and I said to myself, I'm going to leave work at a decent time. I'm going to prioritize myself, maintain my yoga practice, and it's made me so much more efficient when I am at work. And so even if it is the company culture, which is totally my company culture to run yourself to the ground, I said that's not going to work for me, and I'll let my performance speak for itself.
Yes.
And if they say anything to me about it, you know, I took the time to come here, even though I'm, you know, using my vacation days because they didn't want to support me coming to this conference, which I also found a little strange, but because it's growing my own leadership in business and all that. But if you just take it on, you know, do it yourself, I think other people would also follow in the office, and you set an example.
In Finland, where I'm from, people have separate lives, work life and private life, and they don't mingle. We leave at 4, we come to office at 8, and we leave at 4, and we don't touch business issues in the evening. we spend time with the family and have fun.
And
Some people, of course, do, but it's
we can
completely
create that.
understandable, even in the leadership positions, that you don't take job home and you don't answer the calls after hours.
If it's a call after hours, it's a true emergency, not
Yeah.
just regular stuff.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, it looks like the next group is coming in. I just wanted to say thank you. And I wanted to just add in one more thing really quick too, is we've been talking a lot about like the income. I just want to remind everybody about that notion of like you vote with your dollar. Women, I want us to become more than just like a really reliable, predictable target market. So to just really think about how we can make choices. We understand what we need to do to increase the dollars in our pocket, and that is like a collective venture. But also, we have personal control over the way we spend our money and the companies that we choose to support, and research is abundantly available now. So this information, we have access to it. I just want to have everybody just keep that in mind, that we are a really reliable target market, and so if we can stop being so reliable and push companies, we're a huge buying power. So I just wanted to remind everybody of that, and thank you for being here today. It's really great.